To part two of My Guardian's Forbidden Love. In our last part, the delicate balance between guardian and ward was utterly shattered. Isabella uncovered the devastating secret of Nathaniel's past, and his own protective rage revealed a consuming love he desperately tries to deny. This part holds the heartbreaking climax of their restraint, leading to an agonizing choice that will send one of them straight into the arms of the despised rival. Prepare yourself for the confession that doesn't happen and the devastation that follows. Part 4, Chapter 4, Forbidden Confession. The world outside Blackwood Manor dissolved into chaos. A late autumn storm descended with the ferocity of an unleashed rage, mirroring the tension that had been building inside the manor's thick stone walls. Rain lashed against the windows like a desperate cry, and the wind howled through the chimneys, a mournful, continuous sound. The bridge leading from the estate to the nearest village was deemed impassable by the loyal steward, Mr. Davies. They were trapped at the estate, completely isolated. For 2 days, the isolation forced them into an agonizing proximity. With the servants clustered in the kitchens and the general gloom settling heavily, Isabella and Nathaniel found themselves seeking the scant comfort of the firelit rooms. They read opposite one another in the library, the silence between them no longer charged with mere formality, but with the suffocating weight of everything that had been left unsaid since the night in the hall. The air felt thick, heavy with the moisture of the storm and the electric possibility of a breakthrough. On the second evening, the wind reached its peak fury, rattling the glass panes in their frames. Nathaniel dismissed the footman after supper and found Isabella alone in the smaller drawing room, gazing into the flames of the hearth. He stood behind her for a long moment, the heat of the fire doing little to warm the glacial restraint he imposed upon himself. "The storm has taken a tree near the main gates," he said, his voice quiet, almost husky. "It will be days before we are clear." Isabella turned, the firelight catching the shimmer of unshed tears in her eyes. "Are you so impatient to be rid of me, my lord?" she asked, the question escaping before she could restrain it. He closed the distance between them slowly, agonizingly. The stern lines around his mouth softened marginally, revealing the depth of the tragedy Isabella had read in the hidden letters. "You misunderstand my impatience, Belle," he said, his eyes scanning her face with a raw intensity that made her breath catch. "I am impatient for this duty to end, not for your presence to cease. I am an old man, burdened by obligation. You are youth and life." "You are not old," she whispered, taking a bold, heartbreaking step closer. "And if you are burdened by obligation, it is an obligation you have inflicted upon yourself, my lord. I know what happened to Evelyn. I know why you fear love." His face paled, the blood draining from his features. The mention of the name, the revelation that she knew his past, shattered his composure entirely. "You read those letters," he stated, his voice barely a breath. It was not an accusation, but a broken acceptance. "I saw the man beneath the duty," Isabella countered, her compassion overriding her fear. I saw the fire, Nail, the fire that burned for her, and the fear that now consumes you." She reached out, her fingertips hovering over the crisp white fabric of his cravat, inches from the pulse she knew was hammering beneath. "Don't push me away. Don't sentence us both to a lifetime of regret." The air tensions flared. The fire roared in the hearth, the storm raged outside. Nathaniel looked at her hands, then at her face, his entire body trembling with the effort of control. He reached up, not to touch her, but to cover her small, trembling hand with his own large one. He held it there, pressed against his chest, for a single desperate beat, a silent, forbidden confession poised on the edge of his tongue. His resolve was a fragile thing, balanced against the enormous weight of his honor. He had nearly lost Evelyn because he could not protect her from society's demands. He could not bear the thought of destroying Belle's reputation by giving in to a passion that would ruin her future. Then, with a shudder that went through his whole frame, he pulled away, stepping back as sharply as if she had struck him. His eyes were full of self-condemnation and pain. "No," he grated, raising his hands, palms outward, as if physically warding her off. "You cannot know what you are saying. You are innocent, Belle. I am your guardian. I am responsible for your safety, your virtue. You are not to feel this way, and I must not allow it." He was gasping for air, the effort of retreat physically costing him. The full force of his repression slammed down between them. "You must not tempt me, Belle. I am your guardian. I am a man of honor, and I will not be your ruin." His words, final and crushing, were a rejection steeped in duty. He was choosing her reputation over his heart, her safety over their happiness. Isabella felt a cold, immediate despair settle over her. She had risked everything, her dignity, her control, her heart, and he had thrown it back at her, wrapped in the cold cloak of propriety. He had rejected them. She drew her hand back, crossing her arms over her chest as if to contain the sudden, profound ache. Her voice was flat, empty of all the fire she had possessed moments before. "Very well, my lord," she said, her head held high despite the devastation. "If my future is your only concern, then I will make a decision. Sir Reginald Cavanaugh continues to press for my hand." She watched his dark eyes widen slightly at the mention of his rival's name. The pain in her own chest was almost unbearable, but she forced the words out. "I will agree to consider Sir Reginald's proposal in earnest. I shall choose the safe, appropriate path that my guardian so dutifully desires for me." Her words were a punishment, a sword thrust straight into his self-sacrificing heart. She knew he would hate it, but she was heartbroken and desperate to give him what he claimed to want, the end of their dangerous association. She turned and walked out of the room, leaving him alone with the storm and the dying embers of the fire. Nathaniel spent the night in torment. He retreated to his study, pulling down the heavy velvet curtains against the storm, but he could not shut out the deeper tumult within himself. He paced the room, the image of Isabella's heartbroken, defeated face searing into his memory. She had called him a man, and he had thrown his duty at her like a weapon. He sat at his desk, pulling a sheet of foolscap paper toward him. He picked up his quill, his hand shaking, and began to write, not a letter, but a fierce, agonizing vow, a final, desperate attempt to bind his soul to the chain of honor. She is my ward. I must not love her. I will not love her. The memory of Evelyn is a reminder of the fate that awaits women who trust their hearts to my hands. She will marry Reginald. She will be safe. I will ensure her security, even if it means this endless, suffocating silence. She deserves life, not ruin. He signed the document with a flourish that was less a signature and more a self-inflicted wound. He folded the confession, a testament to his agonizing self-sacrifice, but he did not seal it. He could not bring himself to destroy the words, nor could he send them. The paper lay on his desk, an unsent monument to the forbidden longing that was rapidly consuming him. He had chosen duty, but the victory tasted only of ash. Part 5, Chapter 5, Lovers Against the World. Isabella's agreement to consider Sir Reginald's suit had been, for her, a final, despairing gambit to shock Lord Ashford into action. But for Reginald, it was a signal of inevitable victory. He descended upon Blackwood Manor once the roads were clear, bearing flowers, poems, and an irritating air of proprietorship. Nathaniel, having chosen duty and believing Isabella's decision was an acceptance of his command, became a ghost in his own house. He was meticulously absent, leaving Reginald and Isabella to their formal courtship, attempting to maintain a distance that he hoped would safeguard her future and ease the relentless pain in his own chest. But the plan was flawed, predicated on the idea that Isabella was a pawn who would dutifully accept the safe path. The fiery spirit she possessed was not so easily extinguished. The moment of crisis arrived at the Duke of Roxburgh's grand ball, a glittering, crowded event where society came to either cement reputations or destroy them. Isabella, dressed in white silk that seemed to mock her internal despair, felt all eyes upon her, watching for the outcome of the courtship with Reginald. In the middle of the evening, Sir Reginald Cavanaugh, with an audience of half the peerage, dropped to one knee. He delivered a flawless, practiced declaration of love, concluding with the inevitable question, holding out a large, gleaming diamond ring. The ballroom fell into a hush, all eyes flicking between the charming suitor, the radiant heiress, and the distant, dark figure of her guardian, Lord Ashford, who stood near the edge of the crowd, his face grim. Isabella looked at the ring, the symbol of everything she was expected to be, secure, respectable, and cold. She looked at Reginald's expectant, predatory smile, and finally, she looked across the room to Nathaniel. His face was a mask of suffering, his posture rigid with the self-inflicted discipline of a man watching his fate unfold. He was waiting for her to say yes, waiting for his duty to be done. She spoke. her voice clear and carrying across the stunned silence. "Sir Reginald," she said, not lifting the hand he held, "I thank you for the immense honor of your proposal, but I must refuse." The collective gasp from the assembly was audible, a sharp, ragged sound of shocked disbelief. Reginald's triumphant expression curdled instantly into fury. The diamonds slipped from his shaking hand and bounced on the polished ballroom floor. "Miss Harcourt, this is unacceptable. Your guardian has—" "My guardian advises me on propriety," Isabella interrupted, lifting her chin, "but he does not command my heart." The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Gossip swirled like a tempest. Isabella had refused one of the most eligible bachelors in England, a man her guardian had clearly supported. Whispers of her wavering reputation began immediately. Was she too bold, too spirited? Was there something amiss with her fortune? The worst and most persistent whispers, however, centered on Nathaniel. Why had his ward refused a perfect match? Was the Marquess attempting to keep her fortune for himself? Or worse, was the proximity between the stern guardian and the beautiful, spirited ward not as chaste as society demanded? Nathaniel tried to distance himself to protect her, but failed. He was summoned by angry acquaintances, cold-shouldered by others, and his name was sullied by implication. He gave firm, concise statements about Isabella's right to choose, defending her publicly while internally raging at her recklessness. He arranged for her immediate removal from London, sending her back to Blackwood to allow the scandal to die down. But the distancing was useless. The scandal was already clinging to him, and her presence was the only thing that could ever redeem her. He realized with devastating clarity that he could not save her reputation by abandoning her, because his very inaction, the lack of an engagement announcement, had implicated him. He was losing her safety, and he was losing his mind. They returned to Blackwood in silence. The atmosphere was brittle, dangerous. The evening of their return, Isabella found Nathaniel walking in the rose garden at dusk, a place usually reserved for gentle contemplation. Tonight, it was shrouded in shadow and mystery. The last roses of the season, dark red and heavy with dew, seemed to weep for them. She approached him from behind. He stiffened, recognizing her footfall. "Belle," he said, his voice ragged. He did not turn. "You have ruined yourself. I chose Reginald for you precisely because he was safe. Now, your name is being dragged through the mud. You must leave Blackwood. I will send you to your aunt's estate until the scandal fades." "And then?" she asked, the words catching on a sob. "I shall be too ruined to marry Reginald, and too scandalous to marry anyone else. I shall be trapped, an object of pity, and you will be safe, covered in your honor and your duty." He finally turned, his face etched with pain. "It is the only way to save you. I must not." "You must not love me," she finished, stepping directly into his personal space, closing the painful gap of propriety he always maintained. The scent of the dying roses mingled with his familiar scent of cold air and fine wool. She looked up into his tormented eyes, her heart swelling with the powerful, defiant conviction that love was worth the ruin. "I would rather be ruined for loving you than safe without you, Nathaniel." The world stopped. The declaration, absolute and fierce, shattered the last of his self-control. It wasn't a request. It was a devastating statement of fact. She was willing to throw away everything, her fortune, her standing, her future, for him. The battle between duty and passion was finally and completely over. The fire that had been slowly building for months, suppressed by honor, duty, and tragic memory, erupted. He let out a low, guttural sound, part surrender, part agony, and reached for her. He did not ask permission. He simply acted on the desperate, forbidden longing that had driven him to distraction. His hands gripped her face, pulling her up and into him with a violence that was intoxicating. Their first kiss was fierce, desperate, drenched in forbidden fire. It was not the gentle exploration of a courtship kiss. It was a furious claim, a deep, immediate plunge into the passion they had so brutally denied. His mouth was hard and demanding on hers, tasting of regret and salvation. Isabella clung to him, meeting his intensity with an equally fierce surrender. Her arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer, desperate to feel the truth of him against her. Every suppressed glance, every moment of charged silence, every agonizing denial, it all funneled into this one, shattering act. He broke the kiss only to bury his face in her hair, breathing her in as if she were the only air he needed. "God help me, Belle," he groaned against her ear. "I have ruined you. I cannot send you away. I cannot live without you." She pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes bright with triumph and tears. "Then don't," she whispered. "Defy them, Nathaniel. Defy your duty. Defy the world. Claim your ruin. Claim me." He looked at the darkening sky, then down at the beautiful, reckless woman in his arms, the woman who had brought light into his shadowed existence. He was a man utterly undone, but finally, profoundly whole. The scandal was already at their gates. He might as well open them. Part 6, Chapter 6, The Breaking of Chains. The kiss in the rose garden was not merely an embrace. It was an act of war against the polite society that governed their world. It was the definitive breaking of the rules they had both strained so hard to obey. News of Sir Reginald's public refusal, followed by Isabella and Lord Ashford's hasty retreat back to the isolation of Blackwood, fueled the gossip mill into a frenzy. When the whispers reached a fever pitch, the whispers suggesting that the guardian and ward were now entangled in an improper relationship, society did not merely disapprove, it condemned them. The relationship between a guardian and a minor ward, even one as nearly adult as Isabella, was sacrosanct. Any breach of this duty was not just scandal. It was a societal outrage, a profound betrayal of trust that threatened the very foundations of the established order. The condemnation was delivered in the form of letters, unsent invitations, and the arrival of Isabella's aunt, a rigid woman who arrived demanding the immediate removal of her niece. "You have ruined her," Isabella's aunt shrieked at Nathaniel, clutching her prayer book like a shield. "Your reckless attachment has destroyed her reputation and your honor. She must be sent away immediately to Ireland or perhaps the continent until this shame is forgotten." Nathaniel stood before the firing squad of public opinion, his face grim, his resolve shattered. He had held Isabella once in the rose garden, a moment of reckless, desperate joy, but the consequence was now too large. The world would not forgive them. He had promised to keep her safe, and by giving in to his heart, he had placed her directly in the path of ruin. With a crushing sense of inevitability, Nathaniel prepared to send Isabella away, sacrificing his heart for the sake of what little safety and reputation he could salvage for her. He summoned her to his study one bleak, rain-swept morning. Isabella, who had been living on the high of their shared secret, walked in, her eyes shining with defiant love. "We have an answer, my lord," she said softly, walking toward him. "We will marry privately, endure the storm for a few years, and then we will return. Our love will outlast their gossip." He shook his head, the gesture weary and defeated. "No, Belle, I have failed you. I allowed my selfish desires to overcome my honor. I cannot marry you. They would call it coercion, a monstrous abuse of my position. The legal ramifications, the social exclusion, you would live as an outcast, forever pointed at." He placed a travel itinerary on his desk. "Your aunt is correct. You will leave tomorrow. She will take you to her distant estate in the north. It is remote, and you will be safe. I will handle your fortune remotely and arrange a proper settlement for you. I will not see you again." Isabella stared at the papers. "You are sacrificing our life for a polite illusion." "I am sacrificing myself for your well-being," he corrected, his voice flat with pain. "I will not condemn you to my ruin. It ends here. I will live with the silence, the duty, the unending regret, knowing you are at least secure." Isabella looked at the man she loved, the noble, fiercely honorable man who was once again retreating behind his wall of duty. This time, she knew she had to tear the wall down permanently. She was no longer the naive heiress. She was a woman whose love had made her strong. She would not let him save her by destroying her heart. She picked up the travel documents and tore them across, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. "You cannot send me away, Nathaniel," she declared, her voice ringing with newfound authority. "Because I refuse to go." Her final act of defiance was played out later that afternoon. Nathaniel's solicitor, Mr. Finch, arrived, along with Isabella's aunt and a few other key figures who were to oversee the legal logistics of her removal and the transition of her funds. They were gathered in the main drawing room, a formal audience for the final, sober ending of the Blackwood saga. Isabella walked into the room, impeccably dressed, her composure absolute. She walked past her aunt, past the solicitor, and stopped directly in front of Lord Ashford. "Gentlemen, aunt," she began, her voice steady and commanding, I understand you are here to discuss my future, to arrange my safe removal from Blackwood and from the perceived scandal attached to my guardian, Lord Ashford." A brief, uncomfortable murmur went through the room. "I have given this matter careful consideration," Isabella continued, looking directly into Nathaniel's horrified but stricken eyes. "And I have come to a decision. I will not be removed. I will not be silenced. I will not seek safety in a corner of the world without the man I love." She turned to face the small audience, her gaze sweeping over their judgmental faces. Then she turned back to Nathaniel, taking his arm and holding it with a possessive, unbreakable grip. "My lord, you call me your ward, but in truth, I am your ruin. I would rather be ruined by you than saved by any other man." She lifted her voice, making her final, passionate statement for all to hear, a statement that defied convention and duty and society itself. "He is my guardian, my ruin, my only love, and I have chosen him." Nathaniel stood stunned, the air knocked from his lungs. Her defiance, her public, fierce claim, was not an accusation, but the ultimate act of fidelity. In an instant, his own iron resolve crumbled, replaced by a devastating, beautiful clarity. She had sacrificed everything for him, and now he realized his only true duty was to her and to the heart she had so bravely offered. He looked at the shocked faces of the room, at the solicitor, at the gasping aunt, and a dark, triumphant light entered his eyes. He had been a slave to duty for so long. Now he would be a master of his own fate. He turned to the solicitor, his voice deep and final. "Mr. Finch, tear up the documents for the settlement. Tear up the travel itinerary. I will not be sending Miss Harcourt away." He looked down at Isabella, the fierce devotion in her eyes giving him the courage to burn the last bridge to the respectable world. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed the back of it, a gesture of absolute possession. "I have been her guardian by law, but from this day forward, I claim her as my wife. We shall be married here, by special license, within the week. Inform society of the fact, and inform them that I accept the consequences of my choice." He had chosen love. He had broken the chains. Epilogue. The marriage was not attended by society. Isabella's aunt returned to London in a huff, and Sir Reginald Cavanaugh was said to have fled to the continent. The few guests present were Nathaniel's loyal steward, Mr. Davies, and a handful of trusted staff. Their marriage was whispered of as scandalous, a monstrous impropriety. They were, for a time, excluded from the hallowed halls of the upper echelon, left alone in the vast, shadowed beauty of Blackwood Manor. But in the seclusion of their home, the scandal became irrelevant. Nathaniel, stripped of the crushing weight of his duty and his tragic past, transformed. The stern, brooding Marquess gave way to a passionate, devoted husband. He never regretted the loss of society's approval, for he had gained a lifetime of love. Isabella, no longer a ward, but mistress of Blackwood, found her place in the world not through conformity, but through the fierce, forbidden love she shared with her husband. Years later, when a young, curious peeress dared to call at Blackwood, she found Lord and Lady Ashford walking hand in hand in the rose garden, surrounded by their laughing children. The Marquess's face still held the severe lines of deep thought, but they were now softened by an abiding contentment. Isabella's eyes still held their youthful spirit, now tempered by mature, profound happiness. The young peeress returned to London with a report. There was no shame, no regret, no ruin at Blackwood. There was only a love so deep, so absolute, that it seemed to glow from within the ancient stones of the manor, a love that silenced every doubt. Their forbidden confession had cost them society, but in return it had gifted them everything that mattered. And so the chains are finally broken. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through my guardian's forbidden love. Did you love it when Nathaniel made his devastating sacrifice? Did you cheer when Isabella publicly claimed him? We want to hear from you. Let us know your favorite moment, line, or character in the comments below. If you were captivated by this tale of angst, passion, and forbidden devotion, please like this video to help other fans of romantic Gothic stories discover it. And of course, subscribe for more sweeping tales of romance, intrigue, and defiance. Until the next story, may your heart always lead you to love.